The lights in the office park across the street usually stay on until 9 in the evening, illuminating rows of empty desks and a handful of people who are trading their best years for a specialized credential. We are told that the degree is the ultimate escape pod from poverty, a golden ticket into the stability of the middle class. But for many, the math of 2026 suggests something different. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household is now spending $26,266 a year on housing alone, which accounts for over 33% of their total annual expenditures. When you add a specialized degree to that equation, you aren't just adding a line to your resume. You are often adding a permanent floor to your monthly survival cost. The loop begins here. We spend more to earn more, only to find that the act of earning more requires us to outsource every minute of our lives. Think about the moment a person graduates and enters the high-stakes professional world. They have the title, the salary, and the status. Yet, there is a quiet, structural pressure that begins to mount. As responsibilities at the firm or the hospital grow, the ability to manage the basic functions of life diminishes. This is where time-saving conveniences stop being a luxury and start becoming a recurring fixed overhead. It is a hidden second rent that silently consumes financial progress. We call it the monthly minimum. For a dual-income household, this isn't just a lifestyle choice. It is often a survival mechanism. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2024 showed that nearly 50% of married couple families are now dual income. When both partners are working 40 to 60 hours a week to justify the cost of their degrees, they no longer have the time to cook, clean, or commute efficiently. They have to buy their time back, often at a premium that the degree itself was supposed to provide. Let's look at the mechanical reality of this trade-off. When you are time poor, you outsource your caloric intake to delivery apps. You outsource your home maintenance to subscription services. You outsource your commute to ride-sharing because you are too exhausted to navigate public transit. This transition from doing to buying creates a structural deficit. The Levy Economics Institute noted in 2025 that roughly 39% of single adults experience significant time poverty, with employed women seeing a 9-point increase in this burden compared to men. This isn't about being lazy. It's about a biological limit. There are only 24 hours in a day, and if 10 of those are spent in an office and 2 are spent commuting, the remaining 12 must cover sleep, hygiene, and the administrative tasks of existing. When those 12 hours aren't enough, the credit card becomes the bridge. To see how this plays out in a ledger, consider a hypothetical couple. Sarah and David both hold advanced degrees and earn a combined $160,000 a year. On paper, they are wealthy. However, their housing in a metropolitan area costs them $45,000 annually. Because they both work demanding jobs, their transportation costs, including car payments, insurance, and fuel, hit $21,000 a year. This aligns with the broader trend where the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports average transportation spending at $13,318 per year, or 17% of total spending. After taxes, Sarah and David are left with about $90,000. But we haven't even touched the largest anchor in their budget yet. This anchor is childcare. For Sarah and David and millions like them, the cost of specialized labor requires a specialized solution for their children. Child Care Aware of America reported that the average annual cost of childcare reached $13,128 in 2024, a 29% increase since 2020. But for our professional couple in a high-cost city, that number is easily double. By September 2025, childcare inflation was rising at 5.2% year over year, which is 1.5 times faster than overall inflation, according to the Bank of America Institute. If Sarah and David spend $30,000 on childcare and another $12,000 on convenience, spending like pre-made meals and home cleaning, their leftover cash at the end of the year is less than $10,000. They are high-earning, high-status, and fundamentally broke. The shift in how we handle money reflects this desperation for speed. The Atlanta Fed's study on consumer payment choice showed that the average amount of cash a person carries dropped from $81.23 to just $67.24. We are moving toward a frictionless digital economy because friction takes time. When you tap a card or a phone, you don't feel the weight of the transaction. You just feel the relief of the task being finished. But that friction was a natural barrier to overspending. Without it, the second rent of subscriptions and conveniences flows out of the bank account like water through a sieve. One might wonder why these professionals don't just opt out. Why not take a lower-paying job with less stress? This is where the trap tightens. Often, the very degree that earned the high salary comes with a debt load that mandates a high income. You cannot pay back a six-figure student loan on a five-figure salary without living in genuine penury. Furthermore, the infrastructure of professional life is rarely subsidized. In 2024, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that only 10% of private sector workers had access to commuting subsidies. Most are on their own, paying for the privilege of sitting in traffic to get to a job that pays for the car they are sitting in. It is important to pause here and acknowledge that this doesn't apply to everyone. This depends on geographic location, the specific field of study, and the presence of a familial support network. A software engineer in a low cost of living area with retired parents nearby will have a vastly different math than a pediatrician in Manhattan. Reasonable people disagree on whether the cultural prestige of a degree outweighs these financial pressures. Some argue that the long-term career ceiling is so much higher with a degree that these early years of the trap are simply a necessary rite of passage. Let's address a fair counter-argument. Isn't the degree trap actually just a lifestyle creep problem? Critics might say that Sarah and David don't need the house in the nice zip code or the premium childcare. If your job requires you to live within a certain radius of a city center to be available for late-night meetings, your housing cost isn't entirely a choice. A standard daycare that closes at 5:30 isn't an option. The costs are structurally linked to the career path. Another respectful counterpoint is that education is an insurance policy against automation and economic volatility. Even if the net savings are low now, a degree provides a safety net that a high school diploma does not. This is a valid perspective. However, an insurance policy that costs 30% of your take-home pay for 30 years starts to look less like protection and more like a liability. If the goal of the degree was financial freedom, but the result is a permanent state of high-velocity treadmill running, we have to ask if the product was advertised honestly. Returning to Sarah and David's ledger, we see the cumulative effect of these small leaks. If they manage to save $800 a month after all their fixed overhead, they feel successful. But one major car repair or a medical deductible quickly wipes out that year's progress. They are living on a razor's edge. The math of 2026 shows that the monthly minimum to exist in the professional class has risen so high that the surplus, the actual wealth-building capital, is thinner than it was for the previous generation. We are seeing a proletarianization of the professional class, where people with prestigious titles have the same lack of agency as those without them, because their fixed costs are so high they cannot afford to stop. This brings us to the core of the issue, the time-saving convenience. When we buy a meal kit because we worked late, we aren't just buying food. We are paying a premium to recover 30 minutes of our lives. When that becomes a habit, it becomes a fixed cost. Over a year, those 30-minute recoveries can add up to thousands of dollars. In a world where only 10% of people get help with their commute and childcare is rising faster than paychecks, these choices are increasingly mandatory. We are trading our future wealth for the ability to survive our current schedule. It is helpful to view this through a different framework that actually changes your life. The degree trap is not a conspiracy, but a structural reality of the modern economy. It is the result of housing, transportation, and childcare costs converging with a labor market that demands more and more time from its most educated participants. It is a system where you are paid more because your time is worth more, but because your time is worth more, you have to spend all your money to buy it back. This doesn't mean education is worthless, but it does mean that the old promise, that a degree is a guaranteed path to wealth, is increasingly being undermined by the very lifestyle that degree requires. As we look at the rising costs of childcare and the shrinking amount of cash in people's pockets, it becomes clear that the margin for error is disappearing. The middle class is being squeezed not just by inflation, but by the mandatory nature of convenience. We are paying a second rent to a world that doesn't give us enough time to live in it. It's worth wondering if the goal was ever to make us wealthy, or if it was simply to make us more efficient components of a larger machine. When you look at your own monthly overhead, how much of it is spent on things you actually enjoy, and how much is just the monthly minimum required to keep showing up to your job?